which may find them. And as I said earlier, if we go outside in the chronological framework, we have Celtic period slipways at Alanya. And Mutta and Kalaiti refer to Venetian period shipshed at Nimporio and Kora on Andros. I don't know the site, and this is rather outside my period, but this would be important to develop. I've been working on Muslim arsenals and waiting for that to be publication. A couple of general reflections to continue. Archaeologists tend to know about disagreements among archaeologists. Are we conscious enough of disagreements among geomorphologists? Question, if there's time for discussion. I came from Bristol to work in the Mediterranean. In Bristol Channel, one has enormously high tides. I had to adjust to the limited importance of tides, with certain exceptions. To what extent is it important to take tides into account in the Mediterranean? And a final cautionary tale, beware, remember that sandbanks can move laterally. How often are submerged remains covered and uncovered? We think that's true of a site which has been shown by several colleagues at Lasaya, a small town, perhaps only an outport on the south coast of Crete. We did not see all of the breakwater that was shown by Hellenic in her earlier slide. I end with a quotation from a letter sent to me by Honor Frost on the 1st of May, 1973. She was writing about fish tanks at Byblos. She'd just written a note with a diagram of a fermented dating of one at a site near Byblos. Her final words were, "Thank God for the Fermetidae," a prophetic remark which influenced me and other archaeologists. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this very interesting kind of guidelines, if I may say, for understanding and interpreting archaeological finds. I suggest we follow the order of appearance of the speakers, and then to proceed to some final conclusions. So those would like to ask Dr. Kolaiti first, who have questions for her, they may prepare, and then we'll follow with Dr. Bouras. So I think I can start with Ioannis Moschos wants to start with Dr. Kolaiti first.
Yes.
Okay.
I have a question to Dr. Elaine Kolaiti. You referred to the uplift of the Mapra-Litharia Harbour. Dr. Mujas, earlier this morning, during his presentation, he referred to the uplift of Phalassaran Harbour. Is there any connection between seismicity and sea level change?
Very nice question. David, do you want to respond instead of me? Well, yes, earthquakes, as we all know, is the result of the Earth's crust deformation, which in turn results in vertical tectonic movements, uplift or subsidence. A large-scale deformation is expressed by seismic activity and is usually accompanied by a tsunami. For example, the AD 365 strong severe earthquake south of Western Crete caused, excuse me, another window opened on my screen. Okay, caused a total uplift of about 10 meters on the western side of Crete, and a mega tsunami that hit almost the entire Mediterranean. Tectonics is one of the three components of the relative sea level change, along with isostasy and eustatism. So yes, they are very closely related. Another example, because you mentioned it, Yanni, is the Mavra Litharia Harbour, a strong earthquake in the second half of the 3rd century AD, according to our radiocarbon dating of biomarkers attached to the blocks of the jetty, of the uplifted jetty, proved that was co-seismic because the blocks were deformated and collapsed and tilted towards the direction of the seismic wave. And this caused an uplift of 4.5 meters in one tectonic seismic episode. After the 13th, I think the early 14th century AD, there was another episode that caused uplift of an additional 1 meter at Mavra Litharia. Our dating in Mavra Litharia is in accordance with the archaeological interpretation, because the archaeological interpretation says that the ancient theater of Agira was distracted in the second half of the 3rd century AD. So yes, they are closely related.
Thank you. I think I can make a question now. It's my turn. So, Eleni, for the paleogeographic reconstruction of the various ancient sites that you presented, you have used different sea level curves, contours in a way, but for the same time period. Although the differences between sea level stands per geographic area are relatively small, why do you proceed to this differentiation between levels?
Yes, small, more or less small, because between Crete, the Roman sea level in Crete is 1.25 according to the elevation of fish tank, and this is very precise. And in Cyclades is 2.4, and in Peloponnese is 3.6. Saronic and the Eastern Peloponnese is 3.6. Okay, after the last glacial maximum, there was a rapid rise in sea level of about 10 millimeters per year, which then during the last 6,000 years, the pace slowed down significantly at 1 millimeter per year. During this recent period of the late Holocene, always recent period in geological terms, okay, isostasy and tectonics are mainly shaping the sea level. If you want to explain, but I think Marco Agidei explained you what is isostasy and what is tectonics, and you stated the 3 components of the relative sea level change. So based on this, areas with a different tectonic behavior saw a different rate in the relative sea level change, uplift or subsidence. The Phalasarna case, Harbour, is a very exceptional paradigm of this case.
Thank you, Eleni. Any questions for any more questions for Dr. Kolaiti?
I think, Verona, there is a question from Professor Bruckner.
I don't think it's
yes, I've seen on the chat a question from Professor Bruckner. earlier during my presentation.
Having added a tribute to Nick Fleming.
Just to say, he asks me, can you see it, Virona?
I'm trying to, because I have a bit of
earlier today at 3:48.
3:48 then.
During my presentation.
Thank you, dear Hellenic, for your very interesting and conclusive talk. Yes, there is a question. When 14
Carbon 14 dating.
14 dating marine biological markers, how do you deal with the problem of the paleo reservoir effects? We found very problematic offsets compared to dating non-marine material. This is a bit science for me, so Hélène, you may.
Okay. Yes. For example, for the Mavra Litharia Harbour dating, when we dated the biomarkers attached to the blocks of the jetty, of the uplifted jetty, we adopted the delta R. Delta R is the correction value for the reservoir effect. The delta R that was suggested by Ford, Hadler, et al. In 2018. They suggested local reservoir age correction value, if I remember well, of about 150 years during the late Holocene. How did they calculate this marine reservoir effect? Based on real data and by comparing conventional carbon-14 ages obtained from marine seaweed and terrestrial wooden fragments, and both were taken from the same depth, the same horizon. And we calibrated this value suggested by Ford, Hadler, et al. That it was between the two local extrema suggested by Pirazzoli and Soter. Their values were between -80 Pirazzoli and 380 years of Soter's. So we found that the approach of Ford was reliable.
Thank you. If there are no.
Could I just add that for the archaeologist, you suddenly realize that this is a subject you hardly know when the director, one of the directors of the Oxford laboratory said, we've got to recalibrate your dates to take account of the marine reservoir effect because they were shells from a marine context. We don't understand, we just know that one has to revise all our fine arguments. But this is the sort of thing we need our geologist friends to explain to us occasionally what it's up to. But this is the sort of terminology we need to have some idea as archaeologists working in a marine context of what our geologist friends are talking about, without understanding necessarily all the processes. Thank you.
Yeah, and the question is that sometimes we as archaeologists, we ask for immediate results as we understand them, and we never get them because we can't understand the data. I'm just gonna read a comment. It's simplistic, it's a question. Is it simplistic to say that the sea level rise is around 0.5 meters since 2,000 years ago, thanks to Nick Fleming and others after him, and that all other local sea level changes are due mainly to tectonics, earthquakes, etc., etc.?
For me,
I think yes. Why not?
Marco and Nikos, and they could answer too. No, for the last, from the Roman period, we all indicated that from the Roman period today, there is a change between 1 meter, 1.20 in Crete to 3.60 in the Peloponnese. This change occurred during the last 2,000 years. The second part of the question, what was the second part of the question, Virona? And another remark, that we cannot use curves from different places to different places because it is very clear that there are differentiations between different areas.
I think in this way you answered the question because
yes. And I would like to add something to David Blackman in relation with the ships in Piesa on Chaos Island. But when in his turn, I'll give.
I think we can do it. We can do it in
yes,
the next.
To him. Okay.
So we can go now. Questions for Catherine Bouras. I think it's for Dr. Papageorgiadou has a question, or you should switch on the
you're muted.
microphone.
It's not a question, it's rather, I think, a beginning of a discussion, because I have the feeling that we have an increasing tendency for monumentality and luxury since the Hellenistic times, which escalates in the Roman period. And in this monumentality, which touches the heart of the city, the agora, the theater, etc. Now it is a place of the harbors, or the port, okay? And I wonder, is it a change also towards to the symbolism of a port for a city? Does the port begins to be the nucleus of the prosperity, of the importance of the city in the trade routes and the economy, etc. And I don't know if Dr. Mauro has also some hints from the text from late Hellenistic and Roman imperial period to show a change towards to the ports. It's not only a necessity anymore, but it is something more. It has to do with the situation, the place of the city in a network in the region, micro region, interregional, I don't know what.
Yes, yes, I think that the harbor space develops as one of the main monumental areas of a city. And it's more visible, of course, in the Roman period when the costs of upkeeping military equipment is not as important, and commerce, on the other hand, develops. Therefore, the harbor that was at the military harbor, in the case of Kos and in the case of Rhodes, especially, becomes one of the entry points of the city. And since all the ships come in, and trade ships from long navigation routes, for instance, can come in, I think it's safe. I think there is a pattern here, especially in the eastern part of the Aegean, that the harbor becomes the epiphanestatos topos. That's one of the important centers of the city, as the agora and the forum are, as the theater is, and it was, for instance, in Ephesus with the the fishermen, it was an honor for them to be able to participate in the financing of the building of this building. And it was all the testimonies that show that how important it was in Ephesus to maintain the harbor there, because the coast was shifting westwards. So the obvious solution, the obvious response could have been to simply just install something so that ships can unload where it is possible. But this wasn't where the harbor was. This wasn't where the entry point of the city was. And this is why there are 3 important gates that lead into the city. And it's the same in roads. I meant to go through roads as well, show roads as well. My point with the case of roads. The thing is, in roads where the ship sheds were destroyed, on top of the ship sheds there were the remains of the Tetrapylon, a huge big arch that was built at the crossing of the main streets of the ancient city, that was already developed in the Hellenistic period, but it was just emphasized in the Roman period with the building of this huge gate. And obviously it was visible from the sea, and probably it was one of the it was going to become a landmark that would have been visible from the sea. And this is a point that I also wanted to say, how obvious it is after discussing this, from seeing the coins and the depiction of the important landmarks of the harbors, like it is, for instance, in Kenkrai with the temples.
Yes.
In Kenkrai too, maybe the monumental part in Kenkrai also could have been the sanctuaries.
Yes, there is a combination of the city and the harbor in the same time. What we see on the coins.
Yes, I believe that the harbor has an important role to play in the urban planning of the city in the Roman period, which is maybe not the same role as the Forum or as the Agora, but it is one of the key points of the city in that time.
Okay, thank you.
Can I add something, Biron, since Karikla asked also? Well, no, I totally agree with Catherine. I was discussing with her privately, because I say that I think that it's a phenomenon starting in the Hellenistic period, and then in the Roman time it was increased. But, well, Catherine showed the case of Kos and Ephesus, and we have other similar process and development also, for example, in, well, she mentioned also roads. We have a similar process in development in Alexandria and in Caesarea Maritima with almost the same chronology. So I think that it's a process starting in the Hellenistic period, but that in the Roman period, it was increased.
Thank you. Can I just say to Professor Blackman and then to Dr. Mourdzas? Professor Blackman.
On town planning, of course, one has a problem when you mention the word hippopotamus, because the sources would imply he had a professional life of 80 years or so. If we were to attribute him a role in Piraeus and in Rhodes, Rhodos, where the city was a synoikismos of 408. What I think one can agree is there's a feeling already, and I would disagree humbly, that in fact some of the town planning based on certain key elements, like harbours, goes back to the 5th century. This is one natural feature that you can't change. If you're going to build in a harbour city, you have to take the harbour into account. So what Catherine Burrows has just been talking about, the site in Rhodes, where you have a main street crossing of the 2 main streets of the city in the later period. This seems to go back quite early, and it takes account of the side of the harbour, because, as she said, the tetrapelon over the main street crossing. It was built over the back walls of the slipways of the harbour. So this is, and if one tries to look at, and I've been talking to Björn over the years about the extent to which one can have planning in the port areas. Just to add a point, I'm about to publish with permission finally what I found in an archive in Perugia, which is the excavation records of Bartocini, Renato Bartocini, who excavated during the war in what was then Italocratia and the Italian-occupied Dodecanese. We found the supposedly missing records of his reports to the military governor in an excavation which was, I think, interrupted by the Royal Air Force bombing. But that's something I'm about to give in a paper I prepared for a conference in 2020, which I'm finally giving next month in Helsinki. So that's another story. But harbours and town planning, I think I may be rebellious there, goes back well before the Roman period, although it was more developed and imposed in the Roman period. Thank you.
Thank you. Nikos and then Björn.
Yes, okay. First of all, I try to explain the delta R factor because it's a crucial factor. Because there are three stages of difficulty on the radiocarbon dating. The first, to found the biota on the sedimentation sandwich. The second, to have a good data on radiocarbon laboratory. Third of all, to use the correct delta R. From my experience, to, for example, the Mavra Litharia Harbour, to use the Reimer delta R and the Pirazzoli delta R for the same place, I have dating to a distance of 300 years. But when we used the real delta R of Handel Taltri, who found between the terrestrial and the marine sample in the same strato, we have the accurate detection of our sample, and but my experience say that when you have because you have radiocarbon date, because to confront this with the other markers like archaeological markers. If you have datation of tidal nodes or beach rock uplifted or submerged, this date and you have a date of this level indicated from this geomorphological marker is to confront this with other markers like archaeological markers if you have a real datation of the sea level.
Thank you, Nikos. Björn had the hand before, now wants to make a comment. He has already said.
I took it down, I just put the comment in.
Okay. We can read the comment there, and he has shared with us a document as well. So, if there are no other questions for Dr. Bouras, can we proceed with Dr. Papageorgiadou? Questions for Dr. Papagoriadou, can I just see the message now? Okay, can I ask something? As in the case of the monumentality of the harbors and the ports, in a way, there is.
Sorry, I cannot hear you at all. Something. Okay, now it's okay.
The police car outside.
Okay.
Of the foundation and an ambulance. Okay. As in the case of the harbors and the monumentality of the harbors, with the varying degrees of monumentality, there are probably varying degrees of realism depicted on the coinage regarding harbors. So, do you think there is a reason for a city chooses to, at a certain period during the Roman times, to promote more its harbor than a gate? I'm referring to the case of Nicopolis, for example.
Well, the problem is that, as I told, we do not have as many depictions of harbors as we thought that we had to. For instance, we do not have Rhodos. We don't have Caesarea Maritima. We don't have many great ports and harbors that do not have numismatic representation. So this is my problem. Why they do not choose, like Corinth, for instance. Corinth has a vast repertoire for every monument, from the tomb of Lais to the Crini of Pyrene, for instance. We have everything, but we have very few representations of harbors, excepting for Alexandria, which is not the harbor itself, just the famous lighthouse. And this is a question. I cannot understand why they do not choose to have their harbors, although we know that, especially from the 2nd century onwards, we have a great significance and a care from the emperors to improve. And of course, we have the campaigns, and many of these harbors were used for the transport or the logistics of the army. But we do not have such representations, and I think this is a problem. This is a problem. Okay, this is what they wanted to show. It's not a problem. For instance, we have other other testimonies that harbors were used. For instance, the harbor of Patras. We know that the harbor was used by Caracalla during his Parthian campaigns as a logistics, as a base for his troops. But we have other testimonies for that, but we don't have anything from representation and depictions on the numismatic iconography.
Thank you. More questions? You may read a few comments regarding the monumentality of the harbors at the comment section. Any more questions for Dr. Papagoriadou? Okay, we may proceed with the final presentation by Professor Blackman. I think Hellenic wanted to ask something, if I remember right.
Okay. First of all, to thank David Blackman very much for correcting me with the terms, the terminology. My American English to British English. Thank you very much for it, but we have to agree to the terms because we use all terms alternatively, and maybe we make errors. You are right.
Can I just say, you just have to be pretty clear what you mean by the terms. Yes. I'm not saying, I'm not Imperial English imposing the English word for dock. You just have to be clear. And it was when I read about Otsias, about a dock at Otsias, I looked at the plan and I realized that it was a quay. So it was an American English. We just have to be sure what we're dealing with. And the question of docks in the English sense is a subject that there are colleagues here who could follow up. There are references, we can go back and look at earlier ones, or there's the new one that just I've not seen a full report on the supposed Docadamathus. I've just seen Catherine Burras can probably tell us more. I just had something on the École Française website, an online report for a supposed Docadamathus. Maybe I've missed something, and Catherine is the ideal person to know what the website of the École Française says. But studying these docs, that's in the English sense, is something we haven't done. Neruhani, I think probably this is one good example, and this could be minor. What it tells us about sea level is another question. Thank you.
Marco has a question, has raised the
I
hand.
did not finish, wait on a moment.
Okay.
Regardless whether it is called dog or key, okay, we have to agree to the terms. It is a very reliable indicator of the relative sea level change, because it is a rumble mount basis, and on top of it is an aslar structure. I would like to add to your presentation the OGIAS shipset, the shipset at PSA, because Nikos Mourdzas, let me share the screen, please. Nikos, during his research there with the Carthea project and Agia Irini project, went to PSA shipset, and can you see it? Yes, can you see it? Here is the slipway.
This is PSA.
Yes, PSA. Here is the ancient town on the hill, on top of hill, and on the foot, or at the foot of the hill, is the shipset here, and the measured depths of the sloping floor, the edge of the sloping floor, ends at 2.60 meters, and this is in accordance with the Roman sea level, the classic sea level that Nikos, am I right? The classic sea level at in the Cyclades. Okay, and here you can see the cross sections, the cross section of the shipset, and a view of the shipset. And another, to add something else to what David Blackman said, for the beach rock he found in Ramnus, I think, that beach rock could be used for dating, and if you find in the beach rock embedded ancient remains or fragments or pod sheds or what else, then this is a terminus adequem, which means that the beach rock is post-dated the age of the embedded, the incorporated material into it, because you asked for the age of this beach rock. But thank you very much for your presentation of all the shipsets in the Eastern Mediterranean. Thank you.
Eleni,
yes.
Before, just for PSA, you said that it is the level of the classical period of this shipset.
Roman period, the Roman.
Because you know, on the other side of the beach of PSA,
yes,
we have very close to the sea, we have a place with many classical shirts of good quality.
Yes,
which I don't know if it can be related to harbor construction or something different, or probably a temple or something else. So just to have in mind and to see it again.
Nico, do you want to add something to what Heraclea said? Because I have not seen the construction on the opposite side of the gulf.
There's not a construction. It's just a place where we have a lot of search of very good quality, and probably classic or Hellenistic times.
Yes.
Okay.
Can I comment? Can I reply on Poyesa? I am not an immediate source. I'm quoting the work of Calliope Baika there, but certainly for the dating of the site seemed, on the land site, there's no evidence really of it continuing as an independent site in the Roman period, but that is just, well, that's perhaps slightly negative evidence. On the question of the depth, I would need to, this is your publication, Eleni, is this a publication which I don't?
This plan I shared with you is a plan made by Nikos Mourdzas, and was presented in the paper, I think, of Carthea. Nikos.
It's not published. It's not published.
Not published, yes, but yes, it will be published with all the findings all around throughout the coast of Chaos, with Agia Irene and Carthea. Sorry, everything concerning sea level changes. Yes.
At least I am not guilty. I couldn't read something which had not been published, but Calliope's report, it's quoted in our Shipsheds book, but she did an article for a conference I organized with Maria Constanta Lentini at Sicilian Naxos, which was published as Ricordi per Navi del Periodo Antico e Medievale, which is when I started to get involved with post-ancient medieval material. But I look forward to seeing that publication. But will it appear fairly soon? Is it Nikos or
Nico?
Nikos?
Excuse me? I don't know.
Echifigi.
Okay.
Echizaphanisthi.
Yes, Nico. Sorry, here. Yes. Okay. Here is a plan, and
Okay.
Okay.
Good.
Yes.
Good.
Do you want to give us some explanation, Nico, on your plan? The sloping floor goes down to minus 2.5 meters. Okay. Here. You see it here, and there is a paleo coast identified at the end of the sloping floor. I have seen this. I could borrow this plan, David, for your presentation in Naxos. Okay, I'll send you it.
Thank you.
Do you want to add anything else on PSA? Do you want to add anything else to PSA?
And not to PSA, to share some photos of the submerged mineral breakwater of Lasea, if you want.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Please.
Because David, you were the first with Blackman and Brannigan in 1975, I think.
That's
that
right.
you were visited Lasea.
We did field work in just.
You can see
this is not.
here.
This was not so. we didn't have a permit go in the water, so we couldn't dive. These are strict rules, and we were saying Scotty. So the whole of that breakwater was not completely seen, but Theotokis had sent me a Google Air photograph, which showed the breakwater was more than. This is the point I made, that do not assume that the coastline will remain exactly as you've seen it in one year, in another year, particularly on an exposed coast like the south coast of Crete. But we did this as a break from field work up in the Iofaringo in July in temperatures of 40 degrees. It was nice sometimes to have a day on the beach. Thank you.
I think Marco wants to make a comment. He's waiting to say something. Marco?
Yes, thank you. This is a general comment. I'm sorry, I'm speaking from the car, so maybe the line is noisy. Anyway, I just have a comment for the chat, because somebody who I don't know asked, because if we can assume a mean sea level rise in the entire Mediterranean by half a meter in the last 2000 years, and this is it's not true, because sea level changes in space and time depending on the isostatic contribution, tectonic contribution. So it's not correct to say half a meter for the whole Mediterranean. In addition, the sea surface is not flat because due of wind, salinity, and gravity. So it's not so flat. Okay, thank you. I want to thank everybody participating in this very interesting meeting, and I apologize if I am in the field at the moment, and I have a special thank to David Blackman, who cited me a lot with his slipways in Turkey. So thank you to all of you.
Thank you, Marco. Are there more comments or questions to be made? Dr. Professor Blackman, would you like to say something, or I don't know, Dr. Papageorgiadou?
Can I just say thank you for a stimulating day? For me, it's interesting. I went to Athens as a postgraduate to work on the inscriptions of the Athenian Navy, which had been published but not very well. I was not allowed access to the inscriptions in the Epigraphical Museum, so I suddenly found I had to do something different with a year in Athens. So I got a permit from the British Institute in Ankara to study the whole coastline of Turkey, except for the Straits and the area near the Syrian frontier, and I think also the northeast beyond Trabzon. This was wonderful for a few months, and then there was the Cyprus crisis, and I was found and escorted out from Cape Anamur by the Turkish police. I had no idea there was nearly a war in Cyprus. It was 1964. And after that, British people didn't have permits in Turkey. But that's what I said at the beginning, that I gave all my field notes to Nick Fleming, who used them in his articles on evidence for sea level back in the 1960s. But this was 1962-64, and I'm still fascinated by ancient harbours, and very glad to see, and looking at Christophe there, thinking of the important work of our French colleagues. This has been an exciting joint project in a way in which we're involved. And thank you very much for organising today's seminar. And I look forward to being available at least online when we look at fish tanks in September. It's been a wonderful day. Thank you.
That's great, David. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David.
So I think we have to thank you all for your contribution. both panelists and attendees. We had a great discussion. I think it was a very, very useful one-day conference, and I hope that we have the opportunity to speak again about these subjects and these things, which seems to be of great interest for both archaeologists, historians, and the rest of the people who said a lot of things today about the sea level, geography, geopaleography, etc., which for us it's something totally new and very, very interesting indeed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Ευχαριστούμε πολύ. Ευχαριστούμε.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much to everyone.
Thank you. Γεια σας. Γεια σας.
Thank you.
Yes.
Are you still? No, she's gone.